So, good morning, everybody in the West, and good afternoon for all of us in Ontario and points east. Thank you again for joining us for the latest Greening Healthcare webinar. And similar to the theme we've had over our last few events, this is really beyond information. What we would like to accomplish today is a call to action. So we'll talk again a bit, as always, about the urgency and the immediacy of hospital sector response to climate change. This is our one of our two events this year. We're going to talk about success stories. So this is a good news story today. This is all about folks who are facing similar challenges to all the 40 hospitals that are on this call today, and finding ways to get things done, and hopefully can provide inspiration and share knowledge and experience that can move it forward. As my son-in-law likes to say whenever we do karaoke or shouts out from the audience, you can do this. And today is all about you can do this, and time for action, planning for 2025, but also action we can take immediately. So as always, thanks to our industry members listed on the sheet. We could not do this work without you. We appreciate your financial support. We appreciate your technical guidance and support. And shout out always to Ches. Thanks for your partnership and your friendship, helping us all to get things done. Could we go to the next slide, please? We begin every Climate Challenge Network event with acknowledgement of the lands that we share with the people who came before us and who today share these lands with us, the Inuit, the Métis, the First Nations people. We're on a virtual platform today, but I'm speaking from Toronto, the traditional homes of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River, and in particular the Toronto and York region are governed by the treaty with the Mississaugas of the Credit River. And as always, we hope that the work that we're doing together with you today will help in some way to heal the planet and will contribute meaningfully to our common responsibility as stewards of the environment. Next slide, please. And unapologetically, I just want to bring this slide up again, and we're using it as the opening to all Greening Healthcare events now. So, but I need reminding, we all need reminding of the urgency, the opportunity, and the responsibility related to the climate crisis. And again, at risk of some repetition, the climate crisis is not going away, it's getting worse. And unlike the horrors of wars and pandemics, the climate crisis will not eventually come to an end. All we can do is mitigate it. It is the defining issue of our times, and the healthcare sector has a particular role to play. It's a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. It's also at the front line of the harm that's being done, respiratory diseases. It's at the front line of injured frontline workers that are tackling floods and fires and communities being burnt. And it's increasingly at the front lines of the mental health damage that's being created by climate crisis. We have a whole generation that is facing climate change and the increasingly severe impact of climate change for the foreseeable future. And it takes a toll on everybody from a mental health standpoint. Our reality today is that we're not on track to meet 2030 targets. If we don't meet 2030, we are unlikely to meet 2040, and we can't meet 2050 targets. And we've seen the predictions of catastrophic change happening within the world that we know coming through there. And a final part of this three-step message, and again, do forgive the repetition, is that it's a global crisis. But governments can't fix this. Governments can get together. We can have as many COPs as we wish, and they can make commitments, set targets, set goals, and have the very best intentions. But the climate crisis comes down to every single one of us. Hospitals are big players in this scene. every one of you has the opportunity to take immediate action to close the gap. And again, today is all about a call to action, but it's not doom and gloom. It's about success stories. And I've asked my colleague, our director of engineering, Amandeep, to lead the way through success stories. And at the end, I'll come back and we'll talk about what everybody can do, but we'll talk about all the hospitals that are receiving awards for 2023 savings achieved. And again, the immediate action will come to at that stage. But Amandeep, could I pass this over to you, and we'll step into success stories, examples of how people are getting things done.
Thanks, Ian. So jumping right into it, let me just. So we have few stories to present today. One is from BC, another one is locally here from Ontario. So we're going to talk about Island Health first, and followed up with Trillium Health Partners implementation work at one of their sites around OR setbacks. Let me start with welcoming the Island Health team here today. Pierre and his teams are here to talk about their project that um, it's close to their heart, and how they sort of implemented this project, and it's still a work in progress that's focused on operational savings, and how they sort of enhance their in-house team to achieve those operational savings. So before we go into sort of the detail of the projects, Pierre, I want to sort of pick uh, uh, this help us out. Maybe can you describe sort of an overall your organization, and then give us a bit of a brief summary on this project, and how it kind of initiated, and what you're currently doing with this project?
Great. Thank you, Amandeep. Hello, everyone. I'm calling in from the traditional territories of the Wasanich Nations and the Lekwungen-speaking peoples on Vancouver Island, better known as Victoria. It's great to be here. This came about because of the last Chess National Conference in Halifax. I presented on our process of internalizing our continuous optimization program. And then I had a chance to speak with Ian afterwards. And so we discussed highlighting the great work that we're doing. I really take to heart the last slide that Ian showed around the size of the problem, the scale of the problem, and how if you don't make major changes, we're not going to meet those 2030 and 2050 goals. Island Health has made great progress against a backdrop of a growing healthcare health authority, more staff, more patients, more floor space. And so we needed to really find a way to bend the curve, to scale up, as you're mentioning, Amandeep. So Island Health is the Vancouver Island Health Authority. We're one of the 5 health authorities in British Columbia. We're responsible for all of Vancouver Island, and then some Indigenous communities on the mainland. We have over 32,000 staff. We service an area with over 800,000 people. We have 145 owned and leased facilities. And yeah, it's a huge, huge operation. So my team, the energy and environmental sustainability team, are in charge of basically decarbonizing and reducing our impact on the environment and on the human communities that we serve. So that's the setting for the work that we do.
Thanks, Pierre. Let's dive into this. So in terms of, see, you guys started this work back, I believe, in around 2021, 2022 period. And as a result of that, these are the 2 sort of facilities that we're currently highlighting today in terms of the work that proceeded, and there is still continuously that work has been happening. So for the folks online, if you look at this benchmarking chart, each of the lines represents the total energy, and it's one hospital. So as you could see, the positioning of these 2 sites, West Coast and St. Peninsula Hospital, they're both below the median of this benchmarking chart, which is kind of a community hospital, existing hospitals. And you look at it, the median in this case is 65 equivalent kilowatt hour per square foot. The West Coast is around 60.6, and the St. is around 49.1. So when you Pierre started, and obviously these benchmarking positions were lower on for these two hospitals. Like when you see this kind of a sort of a comparatively healthy competition among other hospitals, is that one of the drivers that you guys sort of look at it? I mean, you kind of explain the other drivers that is motivating you around climate change, which is probably the biggest driver, but any sort of a healthy competition among the other facilities, does that drive any of your goals and sort of projects as well?
I forgot to introduce my colleague Bjorn Richt, who is also on the call. I'm hoping Bjorn can answer the questions that I'm not able to. Bjorn was previously our energy consultant, and now he's the technical lead for any major capital and new construction projects. That's a hard one to answer because I guess there is a bit of competition, but what we've learned through internalizing our continuous optimization is that really we're the glue that holds it all together. We're the ones that see the big picture. What we found in the investigations that we do are that a lot of the teams don't talk to each other. They're very siloed. So we were able to look at bigger patterns, bigger systems, and find those and then scale those across multiple facilities. So actually, yes, I would say there is a bit of a competition now because we've enabled the operators and the DDC techs to be able to investigate and implement. And so there is a bit of a healthy competition to improve in these facilities.
And thank you. And I think as you sort of manage a large portfolio, there's always when you put these perspectives out there around benchmarking position and for your facilities that you have climbed a spot and then you continue to do that work through continuous operations and optimization of these buildings. So let me sort of take you to the sort of the other side of this, and this is your story around sort of the savings. So what you see on this graph is electricity and a gas profile. Electricity consumption profile is on the top left-hand corner. The gas profile is on the bottom right-hand corner. A blue dot is an actual monthly consumption to start from January 2020. It goes all the way to June 2024. And red dots are normalized baseline. It applies to both electricity and gas. So anytime the blue dots are below the red dots, that's when the savings are achieved, and vice versa. So the primary, or sort of we can call it the initial sort of fruits that are results that are coming out of your work, and which, as you described, as sort of a continuous commissioning work that's still continuously going on, suggests that on the electricity side, when you compare that against 2019 baseline, 2023 results are 7.9% savings, and equivalent to around $40,000 in sort of utility cost savings and 280,000 kilowatt hour savings. Can you sort of maybe, if and either of you can jump on at any time. So if you look at this graph, it kind of shows you for this particular site, starting back in sort of July and June of 2021, that's when you start seeing the savings and the results starts to appear. At a very high level, can you talk about some of the projects or the sort of the measures that are being developed in that process? And I think, and we're going to go into the details of the measures in a second as well. But what we're sort of more interested in is how did the whole process came along? Like when you guys started this back in sort of 2021, what was the reasoning and how did you come up with the measures, and what were some of the resources that you were finding that are challenging, and then you were trying to sort of recruit those people? So can you give us maybe a bit of a background story around how this whole project came along?
Sure. And Bjorn, please jump in. I'll need your help on this. The folks that work at these hospitals on my team weren't available for this webinar, so I'm kind of winging it. So I hope Bjorn can help me out. The first thing is that we internalized the optimization program. We have 3 building automation system specialists. So instead of bringing in consultants to investigate, it's internally done, and it's we're continually looking at the facilities and the improvements that we can make. So I think that's the biggest piece of this, that we've internalized that expertise, and they're continually looking at our facilities and working with our operators to find savings where they can. So for this one, our building automation system specialist would have spent quite a bit of time in the hospital working with the operators and would have done some basic ECMs that we've kind of cataloged that have the biggest impact across all of our facilities. So the first one is simply scheduling. Jason would have walked through the hospital, talked to staff, looked at rooms that maybe they're only occupied for 8 hours, but the lights and the air and the heating and everything are on for 24/7. So scheduling has a big impact, and that's probably the first thing that we almost always do. And then we look at the airflow. So we look at CSA and ASHRAE, and if it's not a clinical space or an operational space, can we reduce that? Can we save energy? So we right size the airflow. That's one of the first standard things we do as well. And then we look for opportunities for heat recovery wherever we can. And again, that's really paid off. Bjorn, is there anything else that we can add around this?
I think I'll just add, we also did a bit of a lighting upgrade a little bit prior to the 2021. So there was a bit, half the building was converted to LEDs as well. So, and that's easy fruit. Everyone knows that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back here to one of the questions that generally asked to us is that when you're on sort of the hospital side, sometimes there is lack of understanding or lack of sort of developing the measures. And then in fact, after that is an implementation support. You have a facility staff that has already their plates are full with a lot of the work. Like how did you manage to carve out this piece of work and given them that sort of responsibility and given them that ownership around implementing this? And then sort of what are tools and other resources did you provide them so that enable them to sort of do this kind of work? Because this is not something that they've done in the past. This is something probably is new to them as well, because their core theme of sort of a job description is to make sure the facility is running and the patients are safe. But energy efficiency is not always sort of ingrained into those positions. Like, how did you manage that transition for your team so they are given a certain mandate and then resources and probably a training as well to make sure that they get this work done?
Great question. It all begins with relationship building and communications. So again, I sound like a broken record, but having that expertise internalized rather than going to consultants, it meant that we could focus on building those relationships with those folks on the ground in the hospital and then be able to build their trust so that they would trust us to change the scheduling or the airflow and those sorts of things. But communicating with them the whole way along so that they understand, supporting them with our building automation systems, upgrades, helping them with training to learn the new building automation technology. And then once that relationship is well developed, we've been communicating, we then work with them to implement the energy conservation measures. And once the trust is there, we've had some DDC techs and some operators that have really taken this and run with it. The other example of West Coast General, the DDC tech there is absolutely brilliant. And so after we've built that relationship, they then feel empowered to make these changes, to suggest other changes, and then we're able to, step back a bit and give them the authority to make those changes. So first and foremost, relationship building and just constant communication is incredibly important. And just checking back regularly on how progress is being made. And as I said, we're upgrading our BASs. So the technology part of it has been a massive help. Again, I sound like a broken record, but I always talk about SkySpark and how amazing it is and how we're using that to implement a lot of this. Bjorn, do you have anything to add? And then I also see that Ryan Galloway, our other technical lead on major capital and new construction, has joined us. So do either of you have anything to add around how we're succeeding with this?
Yeah, just reiterating your thing. We had a program. Our program is built around monthly meetings and showing results and discussing opportunities and that continuous improvement process. So we're meeting regularly with FMO staff on each of our facilities or regionally, but talking about each facility, looking for opportunities and taking their suggested opportunities and running with it and creating that program.
I think the other thing is just demonstrating cost savings, also increased occupant or resident comfort or staff comfort. So tying it back to our care model and showing that not only do we reduce costs, but things are more comfortable for people in those spaces.
And Pierre, in developing this business case for this project, like, did you have any pushbacks? Like, were you able to sort of successfully initiate this project with sort of creating those positions internally and then finding or sort of providing a value to your management uh, piece? Like, is that something wasn't easy, sort of a sell for you internally initially? Obviously, everybody will support when the results shows up, but how did you sort of position yourself initially when there wasn't any results to show and it was sort of more around, trust me, I will get this done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a long process. It took several years and a lot of work by my predecessor actually to convince everyone that this was valuable and that we needed to internalize this expertise. But once leadership got on board, they're our biggest supporters. We have incredible leadership all the way up to our vice president and chief financial officer, and that's been absolutely key. But like I said, to make the business case, we showed the big energy savings, the return on investment, and the increased occupant comfort and just improvements around the care model. Those were the ones that really convinced people. But with stretch budgets and money is tight, really at the end of the day, I think the incredible cost savings that we demonstrated convinced folks to support this.
Thanks. And if you have a question from Ian as well, I was going to bring this up. The gas consumption trend, as you could see that, unlike sort of electricity, the blue dots are above the red dot, which means kind of around it's during the COVID period. Do you guys want to elaborate on that? What happened during this period that you see that gas consumption increase and you're kind of back to the savings back in 2023 where the green circle is. But however, it's higher than that 2019 baseline. Was this during the COVID period that this consumption increase happened? And then is there any sort of operational changes happened during that time?
Bjorn or Ryan, can you answer that question?
I could answer that question for West Coast General.
Yeah.
Maybe we could pause on
Okay.
that thought, and then unless Bjorn has the context, Bjorn and I were.
I'm trying to specifically remember it. I mean, the operations during COVID meant that we did push everything to 100% outdoor air. Mm-hmm. On a bunch of our stuff, and I'm just trying to remember specifically what that was.
But I do suspect that's what
remember it.
Yeah, that we switched to 100% outdoor air, so that would have increased our energy.
That would have increased it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go down to the next site. Give me 1 second. Where's my West Coast Journal? So similar sort of trends there. Each blue dots is your electricity is your monthly consumption. Anytime blue dots below the red, that's your savings, and vice versa. So if you look at the electricity, that whole period around starting, I think, March and February of 2023 all the way to May of 2024, there's a lot of sort of savings during that period. And then if you correlate that to the gas, during the same period, there's a gas consumption increase. Ryan, I know you said West Coast is your side, so can you help us? What's happening here?
Yeah, this site kind of looks a little bit wild from seeing the energy data and kind of highlighting those peaks and trends. Maybe I'll start with the gas consumption side because I think that's on the timeline of the story, the first kind of major drop. So for us, really, this site has had a heat recovery chiller implemented now for I want to say around 8 to 9 years. And kind of when I had joined Island Health about 2.5 years ago, we had a report done that shared that the issue for the site was lack of heat rejection. So the theory was we needed to put in a cooling tower to be able to get more heat out of the building and actually utilize the system that was in place, which was not really kind of operating effectively. And so through when I had joined continuous optimization, the program had already been kind of embedded in the site. They were working, there was that partnership already established, which kind of gave us a really great start point. Then we brought in an outside consultant, Thermonex, who's kind of like a mechanical design lead. And he gave us some recommendations on kind of changes to our infrastructure. The two big ones were there was a flow issue, and we had an opportunity to pivot from a cooling tower into putting in heat rejection coils. And so those were kind of the two core recommendations. So, but because we had a in-house COP team, the first recommendation, we were able to implement that within a few months of kind of like that collaboration. And so that's the first big drop, is that we resolved the flow issue, which was no capital. Then the big spike was we had to turn our heat recovery chiller system off because we had to implement the capital retrofit of new coils. And so then once the coils were in, we gained the value of both changes. And so that's the kind of the final stage there with the gas. So we're right now projecting around 45, I think, 45 to 50% emission reduction from, I think, $700,000 worth of capital retrofits and kind of that time invested with our operators. So it's a really massive win for our organization in that we're getting to our 2030 goal with fairly little in terms of, and granted, there was that prior investment in the heat recovery system 8 years ago. So it's not, without that, we can't be doing it. But for us as an organization, I feel like we're probably representative of a lot of others that have kind of gone on this journey. We have heat recovery systems in, and they're probably not working well. So for us, it was a very successful opportunity. The big electrical drop there was likely related to just the fact that we weren't using the heat recovery chiller system anymore for heating, but that's also combined by the efficiency benefits through COP, which we would have been optimizing the set points, kind of adjusting and tuning the system that brought down the overall electricity use before the retrofits anyways. So that's why it's so extreme, is that's a combination of demand side management reduction as well as a piece of equipment coming offline. So
yeah, and I think this kind of again highlights, we talked about that in other webinars as well. The impact of heat recovery chillers in this building is huge. And then when you see that impact here, that when the heat recovery chiller is not running, and you see that increase in the gas consumption as a result of that, all of that gas is being saved by the heat recovery chiller when it's running, and that's what you're sort of able to fix that, and you will see the results of that. So
yeah.
that's a great sort of story for people to sort of connect that heat recovery chillers, when they're operating, they're great. When they're not operating, you got to fix it, because otherwise you lose the benefit of having a heat recovery chiller. Just probably at a high level, and we talked about some of these are some of the top 10 ECMs that you continue to implement in your facilities. Maybe if you want to elaborate on a couple of them that we found success more than others. I think you touched on heat recovery chiller, and we have a couple of slides on that as well. So we'll bring that back in a second. So you mentioned scheduling as well for the two sites. How much of that work is currently done, and how much are you sort of using those now to sort of implement the rest of the scheduling in other facilities? Can you maybe elaborate on that piece?
Yeah, I think it might be good to pass the mic over to Bjorn. I just wanted to come in to share about the West Coast General story. Unfortunately, I am double booked, so
no worries.
I think now would be probably a good time to pass it over to Bjorn. But yeah, thanks everyone. Apologies, I can only come in for a short period.
This was helpful, Aaron. Thank you.
Yeah, scheduling is a big gap. And I think that's for everybody in the healthcare facilities. There's a lot of unknowns. You know, we a lot of unknowns in terms of when people's hours of operations are. We can schedule, you know, air handling units on. We can run them all the time, but we need to get to that, tightening up those schedules, and that's the biggest thing we can do is scheduling and doing the airflow right sizing, which is number 3 here. And those are the two. Getting that granular information, going and talking to people, getting that, you know, getting that data and putting into the building automation system is the biggest thing you can do. I found, and it's something that we need to repeat over and over and over again, because there are opportunities for that are everywhere.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, this has been highlighted also in other sort of work that been done in the past, is the scheduling, right sizing the airflows, and all of the similar measures around sort of PS upgrades, adding VFD drives where you don't have the drives that will enable you to do scheduling. All of those adds up to those operational savings that are sort of the key or the first steps in sort of decarbonizing your facilities. I know, Pierre, this is probably close to your heart as well. Ryan probably talked about one of these sites. Maybe you wanna quickly provide a sort of a story to the folks online, like about this heat recovery chiller optimization project that enabled a lot of savings for one of your sites.
I think Pierre had to step away, so I take
Okay,
this.
sure, go ahead.
This is a picture of inside West Coast General Hospital when they were digging into the heat recovery chiller operation in detail. They noticed that it wasn't loading or unloading properly because it was getting a lot of backwash from a higher temperature loop going back into it. And so this picture here is the closed space tees that we were where the hydronic system kind of splits off. So what they did is where the valve is, pretend that valve is not there. It wasn't there before, and so we're getting a lot of recirc water going back into the heat recovery chiller. And so by adding that valve, or adding the one on the right side too, which is closed, we can force the water. Force the higher temperature water, you know, to give off its heat, and so that we're not having reheating the water. The water coming back, not warmed up, and then going back into the heat recovery chiller, basically, you know, killing its load, right, or its ability to function, right? So,
and Bijan, as a result of that, you were able to, because part of that you had to reject the heat outside through the cooling tower, and then as a result of fixing this, you were able to sort of eliminate the new cooling tower project. That's a big achievement in terms of sort of using that sort of a capital. Now you can sort of further use it at some other places, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you're right. There was a project there. It's like, oh, we need a cooling tower. We need more and more heat reject. We need more and more. We need to do that more. But it was really more of investigating. Well, why do we need to reject so much heat? And it was this issue of, well, we were warming up our heat recovery chiller and it couldn't unload properly, and so that suffers at COP, and we're not getting the value out of it. So by digging into this repeatedly, this took frequent site visits and understanding the whole system, and standing there in the room and sketching out the piping, trying to understand the system. We realized that by putting this one valve in, we can eliminate that backflow, and that was the real cause of the issue.
Nice. Have you picked that at the design, we would have not had the years of agony, but I think eventually you guys were able to fix it and make the system work. That's the beauty of that. That kind of takes us to your lessons learned, as Pierre was mentioning, that this sort of helped you sort of create your own team, build your initial trust program, and then this is sort of your part of the success story. Now you don't even have to go to sort of developing a business case, because now everything is sort of improved internally.
Yeah, I mean, at these points are pretty much speak for themselves. So,
Hmm.
I mean, it is engaging with them and learning from them, having their insights because they see it every day. Um,
Yeah, so putting a trust to your team, that's what I think eventually came out, right? Like as a
that
you enable them through that, providing them with the opportunities, and a success is kind of reflected in the results that you guys see. And I think that kind of takes us to the last slide of this is around when you compare the two sites, you're close to targets on sort of base electricity. There's still opportunities on electric cooling, but there's still opportunities on the base thermal on the West Coast side. So what we heard is that there's still a lot of work in progress, and this kind of continues as a work in progress that will help you even sort of generate further and further savings. Are you guys using these sort of learnings from these two sites and applying across your other sites as well?
yeah, absolutely. We're applying it across our existing facilities, and I'm keeping an eye out in any new facilities if we have a plumbing mistake like that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bijan. This is really helpful, and I hope are you going to stick with us for if there's any other questions from the audience. I'm going to now move on to the second case study for today, which is Trillium Health Partners, and how at one of their Queensway site, they're able to implement an OR setback project, which is again one of the key projects that in terms of many hospitals have started to implement, but there's many hospitals haven't implemented those sites. So I have a Pooja from Trillium Health Partners here to help us sort of walk us through that project. So maybe Pooja, can you provide us an overview of the project, and then we'll get into the details, how it all started, and sort of all the conversations you had with the clinical folks and some of the pushbacks.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Pooja, and I'm the project manager at the facilities and operations team at Trillium here. Thank you for having me today. And it puts a smile to hear from Victoria, BC. I did my undergrad there, so it's always nice that the West Coast is doing well. Yeah, so in the pursuit of, doing some energy savings at the hospital, we launched this or HVAC optimization project this year at Queensway Healthcare on Showway Drive, Toronto. We have about 8 operating rooms located on the level 1 of the hospital. They are serviced by 2 AHUs, including the rooms and the corridors as well. They are running 24/7, and the goal was to reduce the air change per hour when there's nobody in those rooms. So whenever it's unoccupied. While maintaining any like space condition that is like temperature, room pressurization as per the CSA requirement. And the best part about this project was that the OR suites are only for day surgery and procedures. And so this definitely helped us have a smooth sailing when it came to scheduling and coordinating this work in the hospital for those ORs. Some challenges that we had at the beginning was addressing anything related to our IPAC team. Usually for these type of project, we have to consult our IPAC team. So any construction related projects that we do, we need to pull them in. We usually have to fill up detailed construction permit, which shows the project scope, the timelines, drawings, point of contact, and identify any level of risk that is involved for this project and how we are going to mitigate those risks. Once we get some green light from them and we're ready to start. Can we move on to the next
yeah,
slide?
absolutely. So I just want to touch on one thing that I know where this project started. I know that you mentioned about sort of one of the goals was to sort of save energy and emissions coming from the operating rooms, but from what we know is this kind of initially started, an idea was from a clinical team or clinical folk. Like Nita Rao sort of went around and sort of talked to the clinical folks at the QSAT and asking that question, do we need these ORs to be running 24/7? And can we sort of look at sort of optimizing these OR suites? And then the conversation kind of went to your team where you was able to sort of pick that up and then say, "Well, absolutely, this is some of the projects that you can do." And then this is the story that unfolded after that, is how sort of the implementation of that project happened. But I think I just want to remind the audience around this is that it's not always the facility teams that sort of are looking at. There's a lot of interest now from the clinical side. When they're in a facility, they are always interested in knowing how much emissions are they generating, and that sort of originally started this project around reducing the emissions in the ORs by optimizing the ORs. Maybe you want to sort of the next couple of slides, as you know, is around AHU summaries. You want to talk about quickly what's the base case, energy efficient case you originally proposed?
Yeah, so for the base case here, we had two AHUs servicing the supply fans and return fans, and we all had the VFDs running for those fans under a 24/7 period. And the proposed case was to reduce the air change per hour for the unoccupied mode from 20 to 6 ACH ideally, which would give us a 30% reduction in the VFD for those 14 hours in a day of unoccupied mode.
Cool, thanks. And then this is your schematics or BAS screenshot for an OR unit, where you have an enthalpy wheel, a preheat coil, and the fans. And typically, which is what you see in a lot of the OR rooms, served by sort of two redundant units, and they provide a conditioned outside air, and then they recover the heat using enthalpy wheels. So the systems, as you mentioned, they were originally running at 75% supply fan speed. And then they were, your scope was to sort of reduce those air change rates to 46 and then bring them down to a speed of around 30% on the VFD speed. So part of that process, you did a lot of air testing as well. And these are some of the results. Can you maybe describe some of that process when the implementation happened and sort of the air testing results that you guys see? It's gonna, sorry, I think we'll come back to that. I know there's a couple of slides that sort of misplaced, but maybe talk about a little bit of the departmental engagement. I know you touched on that. And can you sort of describe some of the things that you did on sort of on the construction side, and what was the departmental engagement during that process? There was some back and forth. You mentioned that happened between the ORS team, the IPAC team, that you guys were able to sort of respond to those. Maybe can you help us understand that process?
Yeah, definitely. So once we have a certain scope figured out, we had to make sure everybody is involved and engaged in that process. So communication is key in this case. So clinical staff, the IPAC, the occupational health and safety, our facilities team, just having everybody on board, understanding what's the scope. We had to figure out the actual ORs, occupied and unoccupied times. How will schedule look like for the work that needs to be done? If they wanted any buffer time in between, before and after, and just make sure that everything is done within that IPAC guideline. So the first thing was to make sure have the construction permit filled up and approved by the IPAC team. Usually they also come and look around and see where is the location exactly. They kind of want to know where you're going to start this project. They look at the ORs as well. So depending who you're engaging, they will come and look at the area that needs to be renovated or anything like that. So for this project, we also installed new occupancy sensors, pressure sensors, and display screens for each OR. We had to do new data, network data drops and emergency receptacles. The other thing that we had to do is do walkthroughs with all the relevant parties like we had Honeywell, Canada facilities, the IPAC team, all coming to check the location of these ores, where they will be doing their work, finding out any accessibility issues that they may have on that day. So everything, we kind of run a scenario and make sure that any challenges we have, we can resolve them along the way.
Yeah, and generally, I think you guys, there's few questions that are always comes up, right? What are can you share a standard, or can you share a precedent that there's where this has been done, or where it's been written? So my understanding is that you guys were able to sort of convince the IPA folks through sharing the CSAs at 17 standards, their recommendations around why operating rooms could be reduced airflows. And also there's, I think, generally concerns, how soon can I get my ore back to a normal occupancy mode? And that was, I believe you guys tested those systems to be brought back within those 5 to 15 minutes timeline, and they were happy with those.
Yeah, definitely. They had some questions. IPAC had some questions regarding, making sure we have environmental cleaning done after the work is completed. PPE equipment is on for everybody entering that area. How long it will take going from a 20 ACH to a 6 ACH. So they also ask a lot of literature and references, any guidelines that can help them understand the technical side of things regarding this optimization project.
Thank you. So just to kind of, can you walk us through some of the timelines? How quick was this project, and sort of the total cost and sort of the estimated savings and some of the supplementary benefits that you see coming out of this project?
Yeah, so we've had some walkthroughs and communications were happening prior to March 2024. And then we had the installation done around March 2024. Everything was commissioned in the April and May 2024 period. And then after the implementation was done, we had to do a trial period. So we had our contractor come in to do some air balancing testing for us and get us the report and see what we are seeing in terms of the ideal ACH that we wanted. That in this case, we did not end up getting to where we wanted, but we tried our best to see where we are and what can we achieve in that timeline. And then we went live in June 2024. All work was completed after hours, given that it was day surgery only. So we were able to schedule something after hours that worked out really well for us. And IPAC was also a little bit lenient, the fact that it's not during the day. Yeah, so the total cost was about 69,000. We definitely had a lot of savings on this project and some rebates as well. And this is definitely a stepping stone to ensuring we keep on doing more projects as such. So this is our first one. We're hoping to do more in the future. I think there's a lot of projects, a lot of hospitals where 24/7 is something we hear all the time, and scheduling is the way to go as much as we can save some energy here and there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I just want to sort of also show as we talked about sort of ongoing commissioning, which is part of the projects, and sort of reflecting that these are definitely, in addition to sort of satisfying the clinical requirements, you also have to have a pulse on for a longer period of time to make sure that the savings are achieved, right? So, and in case of your project, you accomplish, so I can sort of walk through and then maybe I'll get your feedback on this is, if you look at sort of the bottom left-hand graph, which is the OR VAV damper position. So during the occupied period, it goes to 100%. During the unoccupied period, it goes to around 20%. And then it kind of matches with the OR's VAV flow as well. So during the occupied period, the graph above in black is you're looking at around 1100 CFM, and during the unoccupied period, it's a 600 FM. That's this air change you talked about, right? Going from, ideally, you were looking at going from sort of 20 to 6, However, you can't go to 20 to 6 because of today's issue. That's one of the lessons learned. We'll talk about that. But interestingly, if you look at it on the right-hand side, which is your OR VFD speed, it's fluctuate, but it doesn't fluctuate as significantly as what you would see on the VAV box or the damper position. So hence, it kind of tells you that you mentioned about the ongoing commissioning piece is that there's still savings, but they are not as materialized as you would say that originally sort of you anticipated, right? So maybe can you elaborate on that piece of ongoing commissioning work that would help you sort of get to the eventual savings that you originally estimated on this project?
Yeah, I think there's still lots of work to be done when we look at the data that we are seeing right now. And so we plan to work with our contractors and see how we can optimize the VFD speed further and see if there's any air leakage or anything that we haven't identified yet to make sure that we are able to reduce that air volume further. But we have to make sure we are maintaining that pressure required by the ORs as well.
Cool, thank you. And that takes us to the lessons, some of the lessons, or can you walk us through some of your lessons learned and how you're sort of taking the next steps in this projects and other projects that you plan to do?
I would say the fact that we were not able to reach that ideal ACH is definitely something to take from here. There's definitely lots of work to be done. We will definitely keep on optimizing our AHU VFD speed and see what we can do further to make that happen. Some lessons learned, we definitely see that communication with the entire team from much beforehand, making sure everybody is on board, everybody's aware of what's happening is key, especially in a hospital setting. Safety is the most important here, and that's what we value the most. So the construction comes later, but first of all, it's the safety of the patients and the staff we work with. And given that this one went pretty smoothly, we would take that and continue making sure that we are involving everybody in the projects that we're doing, especially something that is OR, which is a highest risk area for the hospital.
Thank you, Pooja, for your time, and sort of you may expect a few emails from the hospitals on the call today because everybody's looking at these projects and they're looking for those case studies where the challenges that have been sort of met with and a lot of lessons learned. I'm going to pass on this to Ian now. Ian, over to you.
Yeah, Amandeep, thank you. And thank you, Pooja. That's awesome because it's practical, it's hands-on, and it's the story coming from the hospital. And Pierre and team out at Island Health love the idea of continuous commissioning, that you've achieved a lot, but it's just the beginning. You've got a long ways to go. We want to round this out a little bit by looking at the bigger picture. So if you were at our summer workshop at Cortellucci Vaughan a few weeks ago now, this is the list of our 2023 hospitals and the savings they actually made. And if you add up the total cost savings, that's about $1.5 million. If you add up the tons of emissions, it's 12,000 tons of emissions. You'll see 3 hospitals there from Alberta, our friends at Alberta Health Services, who are busy doing this work, and we hope to profile a bit later in the year. And St. Mary's General Hospital, they're the 4th from the top. That was a comprehensive project that we've been tracking with both the hospital and with Blackstone, who put that project together, and we're expecting to profile that. So there's more to come on this story because these can-do stories are so important. But hospitals are doing these things. We track them. We celebrate them. You see, this is at Cortellucci Vaughan, where we presented the plaques to a number of the hospitals who were able to attend that event. And this is the highlight of our lives. We work hard to help hospitals make improvements. When this comes through, we love it. So acknowledgement, respect, appreciation to all the hospitals taking action. And hopefully there's both inspiration and motivation there. This table really summarizes the financial and the environmental case for action, if it's not already clear. our goal very simply is to have 2 of these slides next year. When we do this next year, we want twice as many hospitals showing really significant savings. And again, that hopefully inspires, motivates us all. Next slide, please. Reminding them, this is our top 12 measures. We presented this at Cortellucci Vaughan. And if you read it, it's remarkably similar to Island Health's top 10. We got 2 more because, it's we're greening healthcare, but you get the idea. There's real commonality. Scheduling is at the top. On the right-hand side, Michael's included a couple of resources, recordings from webinars, different activities that are that you can find on the Greening Healthcare website. But we're talking now about making the commitment. So we talked at the beginning about urgency. We talked about opportunity. Like these are feel-good projects. When you get them right, they feel great. Opportunity to feel good, to make a real contribution, and responsibility. Every hospital has a role to play. To, again, all the hospitals on this call, pick 1 or 2 of these. Note that the OR ventilation, the OR setback work at QSite took 3 months to pull together. We can do this. We can do this quickly. But we have to make the commitment. And I'm really hoping that most of you will leave today, notwithstanding your inboxes and all of the pressures and priorities that's happening within your work lives, that you'll commit to doing some of these things. And you'll find, just like Island Health, when you do a couple of them and they go well, everybody gets on board and it just gets easier. But you got to get started. Next slide, please. Just reminding of the members, every one of you on this call that's a member of Greening Healthcare, thank you. Again, we can't do any of this without you and our industry partners and the government and utility companies that are helping us with this work. This list is growing by about 1 hospital every 2 months. And next slide, please. And you'll recognize your friends and colleagues in there. And for everybody on this call, the industry members, the hospitals, join us. This is truly a networking phenomenon that happens with Greening Healthcare. Every hospital that joins brings new data, new insights, new ideas, and gets the benefit of everything that's gone before. And Michael is a master at connecting you with the right ideas at the right time. Every industry participant here, join in. We've got information to share with you, and we value highly your technical contributions to the work that we can do here. So join us, become part of this. There's a lot of work to be done, and we're running out of time. Next slide, please. The events that you either took part in or missed so far this year, back in February, we had a webinar that was around planning for success with how do you put multi-year plans together for this work? We looked at measures in April. We're looking at them again right now. The September 4th workshop was in person at Cortellucci Vaughan. The recordings are posted on our website. In my view, it was a magnificent event. Senior level people really wrestling with how do we get new hospitals to consistently perform well. Coming up, we've got the forum coming on November the 4th at the Delta Hotel in Toronto. That's our big strategic event for the year, which sets the stage for 2025. But we'll have a keynote, we'll have executive panels talking to where are we going, where are we at, how do we get there. We will have a second energy savings leaderboard meeting, and we're narrowing this down. St. Mary's General will for sure be profiled, and we're looking at a couple of others. That's going to happen in November after the forum. And the recordings, registrations, everything about this you'll find at greeninghc.com under events. So become part of this. The contact information you've got. Michael is the point person for every member in and every event in the program. He's been our program manager for a decade now. I'm Ian Jarvis, the executive director. And as you may have gathered, this is a personal as well as a professional commitment to this. Those of you contemplating membership, Heather Bell is our person for guiding you into the program, helping you first evaluate, is this the right idea at the right time for you? And if it is, guiding you into how best to participate and get full value. And Amandeep, thanks for taking the lead today, our technical director of the overall program, working one-on-one with hospitals across the country, figuring out the right things to do, getting them done properly, validating the results, and I think in many cases helping achieve better outcomes because of the particular lens that he applies. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Stay tuned. Plan to be part of the in-person forum on November the 4th. Look out for the follow-up to this later in November, and we look forward to great things happening in 2025. Have a wonderful day.